Hi everyone, Cymber Lily Quinn here from the Improvising Harpist, and today I have with me Claudia Watson, who has been working through my class and sent me a really nice note the other day, and said that something I've been doing had been changing her life, and so I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. So, so tell us, Claudia, what harp life was before you came into the Facebook group and started the class.
Well, I've kind of had two harp lives, and my first one began about 30 years ago. And back in the day when, frankly, I just happened to hear some harp music on the local station and really liked it, and walked into somebody's house one day because they had CDs and saw a harp sitting there. And so I bought it was a Liberty 32 string triplet. And I started playing it self-taught. Now I could read music well, treble clef anyway, because I played clarinet and flute, right? But this was a whole different kind of a journey for me. And as you know, 30 years ago, we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have near the repertoire that we have now either. And so I kind of stumbled along with some of Kim Robertson's stuff and some of Stu Richards stuff. And I didn't practice regularly. I played for weddings and churches a little bit and things like that. But I was never very secure about it at all. And in 2005, after Hurricane Katrina, when I went on the road to support the recovery from that disaster and disasters after that, I completely quit playing. And I kind of lost interest by that time. So I don't think I was even thinking about, well, what happens to my harps eventually, or et cetera. So, but when COVID hit in 2020, and I came home and started working from home, I looked at that harp in there and I told my husband, I said, I either have to relearn to play it or I need to sell it. It's just not fair to the instrument to have it sitting around like that. So, so I started playing, and found out that I'd lost about 85% of what I needed before. And I started with music that was probably a little too difficult for me. Some of Lisa Lynn's more complex pieces, really beautiful, still like to play them, but not a good place to start if you're starting over. Somewhere along the line, I did discover Anne Cosby Goodett's pieces and Christy Lynn's pieces, and that gave me some help with how to place my fingers, how to hold my hands. My hand position was really bad. I think it was causing me some physical problems, but I really got into the whole thing, and I bought a new harp, a 34 string Breeze Mariposa, which was a good thing because 2 months after that, my triplet cracked across the soundboard. So I always say it had a temper tantrum and crack, but anyway. So I no longer have that harp. But so anyway, but I still kind of struggled. I was still tied to the page, right? And I was still, which to me, it's good to be able to read that music and use that music, but if you're completely tied to it, I think it kind of puts you in a box. At least that's true for me. So I was doing better, but trudging along.
Yeah. So your story is kind of similar to mine in that I grew up very musical, left music for a long time, and then came back. And when I came back, I started playing the harp. And I could read music back in the day, but it had been a very long time. And so, like you, I had to relearn how to do that. But I also found that um, I did better playing my own stuff. I've never been a great memorizer, and
Me neither.
I'm a much faster reader now than, of course, when I first started. But um, I feel much more confident, and secure is a really great word for how I feel when I'm playing my own stuff or I'm improvising, and I'm not so tied to it must be exactly this note, this note, this note, this note, this note. So,
Well, exactly. So down the line, I was starting to research. I was looking for more music, right? Because there was just a lot more music available than there used to be. And so I started researching. That's when I found out about Harp Therapy. I'd never heard that before. Christina Trent's program, and the Harp for Healing program, which is the latter is what I'm a part of now. There was no traveling involved in Heart for Healing. And after having been on the road most of the last 17 years, I don't want to tie myself to anything where I had to do any travel to get certified. Um, so anyway, I also found, and I don't remember how I found your Facebook page, and Cymber, but I found that, and it was, and you, about the time that I started following your page, you offered the pilot that I signed up for. And frankly, it only took me about 2 or 3 lessons to kind of go, I get it. I completely get it. I mean, I'm sure that I could polish up my improvising skills, but it was so freeing. And it aligned perfectly with me wanting to apply to the Heart for Healing program, which does require you to do a lot of improvisation. I don't know whether I would have had the nerve to try that had I not done your program first, or at least part of your program first, to go, oh yeah, I can do this, right? I can do this. And so that's kind of where that went. It was very free in a lot of different ways.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because that is the goal with the Improvising Harpist program and with the Facebook page, is just to keep giving you and everybody permission to step away from the page. You can do it. And there are some basic tools, but they're totally learnable. They're learnable by beginners, but especially musicians who are coming from another instrument and you already read music at some level or have had some music theory or whatever, that this stuff, just like you say, it only took a couple lessons and you're like, oh, I get it. The numbering system really
Yeah.
makes it so much easier to work in multiple keys, and to and then when you know the modes, you use the numbering system with the modes, and off you go into improvising beautiful stuff for the rest of your life. this is that's the goal, is to get people there. So what do you think is going to happen next for you?
So, and let me, I did make a little list here because I want to make sure that I covered everything. One thing I wanted to say to those of you who may be out there struggling to read 2 lines at once, right? Because clarinetists and flutists don't do that. And on my first journey with the harp, I really couldn't do that, right? I would have to learn one and then the other, right? And I thought, oh, this is just the way it's going to be. It's some kind of learning problem that I have, and I'm just going to have to accept that. But now I all of a sudden down the line, I realized I was reading both lines at once. Now,
Mm.
that's not to say that on more complex pieces or places where I may be having a problem, I don't have to go back and disassemble it a little bit. But I I credit improvisation skills for that, because you're not quite so tied to the page. And I think one of the things that I did without even thinking about it was I would be playing the right hand and kind of glancing at the left hand and just sort of drawing in notes from the left hand. And then as I got better, I would fill it in a little bit more, right? Instead
Mm-hmm.
of saying, oh, chop, chop, you've got to be able to do both before and put it together. No, I did that in a little free, I did it in a much freer way than I would have been able to do that before. So, and it kind of surprised me because I had just thought, oh, this is just going to be me. It's kind of like being dyslexic or something. I just can't do that. But I find I actually can, and I get better at it all the time. So that's one thing. The Heart for Healing program does provide a lot, it require a lot of improvising. And I just finished my level 1 certifications and have signed up for the level 2, which requires more work with the modes, which, improvising is really critical for that. And I, if you when I signed up for that program, I would have told you that improvising would have been about impossible for me, and memorization. I can improvise just fine. The memorization is a little bit harder. What I find is that I actually use a lot of lead sheets, right? And then kind of improvise on the left hand. I found others in my on my of my colleagues that do the same thing. And in that way, I'm able to memorize. But sitting down and just taking a piece with treble and bass clef, I'm going to have more problems doing that.
Mhm.
Maybe over time it'll get better. But you know what? The thing that I love about Harp for Healing, Harp Therapy is that it is not a performance art. It is a sharing art.
Mhm.
And and simplicity is valued, right? They say sometimes when classical performers, on the harp come in, they have a lot of problems adjusting because they want to do all the fancy things, and that's not necessarily what you want in a healing environment. So for those of us that can play simple melodies and do it well, and can improvise, um, that really sets us up to be able to observe the patient and meet them where they are and change the music, whether it's tempo or rhythm or whatever it is, or mode, to help them. And to be able to do that, you've got to be able to improvise. So, to me, improvisation is really really key. Heart for Healing Level 1 requires for your final recordings that you do 5 final recordings of 10 minutes each. One's for children, one's for a pain relief. There's ones for end of life, different things, right? And so you have to select or improvise several pieces and segue them all together, right? And because of the improvisation skills, I found it very easy to segue the music,
Nice.
one piece to the other. And I add some improvisation there. And one thing I find sometimes is when I'm sitting at the harp and I'm playing a notation piece of music, all of a sudden at the end of it, I'll just start improvising off at the end of it. So I have a lot more relaxed and a better relationship with my music and with my harp than I did. I mean, I think when this probably isn't true for everybody, but it's true for me. When I'm just tied to the page, I'm kind of separated from my harp, right? But when I know that I'm free to maybe play that piece a little bit differently or change a chord if I think it doesn't sound good, or maybe combine two pieces of music that I think would sound good together, or it's very freeing to know that I can do that, and that's considered proper,
Wow,
for
that's
lack of
so
a better term.
yeah, sure. So what you're saying is so exciting to me because this is everything that I've been trying to communicate through the Facebook group and through my teachings and classes and stuff like that. And I have heard from teachers who work with children that if they teach them to improvise very young, that they have a much easier time reading. And
I would believe that.
yeah,
It builds something up inside of you, right?
hmm
That reading notation, I'm not understating the importance. I'm so glad I'm glad I came into a reading music, right? But at the same time, I wish I had had that freedom with improvisation and those sorts of things, because I think it relaxes you, and it makes the music more your own to be able to do that. You own it more.
yeah, you own it more, and then although it's not a performance, in some ways it matters more when you're playing at bedside, that you're relaxed, that you're not reading, that you're interacting with the patient or the client first, and then creating the music as a response to that relationship and that environment. And being able to do that, improvise, even while you're talking or doing, or just there's no hesitation. And
Yeah.
I oh, there's some noise going on outside. Let's see if I turn that off. There we go.
At
All
least there's no barking from my son.
right.
There was barking a minute ago. I don't know
Yeah,
how much you're picking
but
that up.
oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of
I know
live,
you have a
right?
dog.
I do. So, yeah. So this is all. I feel what I feel from you talking is this sense of freedom and
Mhm.
um, and movement that you're not trapped, you're not constricted in any way, that you can go where the client is going, you can go where the music is going, and you have the confidence to know, yeah, I can do that. And that's super cool.
Also, if you get lost, you have a better chance of
Finding your way back.
finding your way back.
I won't tell this lengthy story. I'll tell it sometime in a class, but I saw a pianist with an orchestra get lost. And the whole thing was like I was sitting very close so I could hear the pianist and the conductor talking, and there's like, well, what are we going to do? The orchestra's still playing, and the pianist is still playing. He's just making stuff up that matches what it's supposed to be, but he's like, that is a master who can.
Must have been a terrible feeling for him too. I mean, it's still, even with those skills, that would have been a dreadful feeling
Oh yeah,
in front of a bunch of people.
but you know
Um,
what? I would say only the people in the front row knew because it was so seamless. It was just anyway. Clearly, the guy had spent some time improvising in the Russian genre, so he was able to keep it going. This big Russian piece that he was playing, and they eventually
wow.
figured out how to get back together and finish the piece. And they did it all while they were playing. There was no stopping. There was no like what's. They kept going, and that is one of the beauties of improvisation too. Is you like you say, you can just keep going. If you get lost, you make something up until you find where you are, and keep going. So it sounds like you've had a lot of really nice outcomes from all of this.
I have, and I learned a lot through the Heart for Healing program, and doing the improvisation, because we had to submit improvisations throughout, there in different modes and then different types of music and different keys and that kind of stuff. And I think what I found the most challenging was what I thought I would find the least challenging, which was non-melodic, non-rhythmic music. I really struggled with that.
Mm.
I don't know why, but I mean, and I actually got Nicole Anderson as my mentor, and I actually got all ready just to submit it. I thought, this time I've got it. And I thought, oh, I'll listen to it first. And I listened to it and I could count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just like back to the drawing board, delete
Mm.
that. But by the time I got to my finals, I used Scarborough Fair, and then I built off of that and went into a non-rhythmic and improvised off Scarborough Fair and things like that. I was pretty sure about, what I was doing and how to get there. So um, I just think that improvisation skill is really critical, and I think it's helpful whether you are a performer or whether you're like me, a non-performer. I don't want to be a performer. I never really wanted to be a performer.
Mm.
Um, so um, so to me, it's very freeing. It's like it's okay if you don't want to be, a graduate from a music program and be a performer and perform all of these classical pieces. And because when I was studying flute, I was studying with a couple who are very well known, but it and they were very good teachers, and I'm glad I did it. But one thing I noticed is that they were only interested in the classical genre and what was on the page, and I didn't realize that's what bothered me at the time, but that is what bothered me at the time. I learned a lot from them. Don't get me wrong; they were very good teachers and very supportive. But you realize at some point that's not who I am.
Mhm. Mhm. All right,
And I
so
think it's important for harpists to understand where they want to go with their music, and that it's okay not to be an A1 performer on the stage.
yeah, for sure. I second that and echo that and ditto that and all of those things that the young people say, for sure. So, is there any last bit of advice you'd like to give people who are considering taking the course?
I I definitely recommend it because you're going to find it's going to change your harp playing, and it's going to change your level of comfort with your playing, and it's going to change your relationship with your instrument.
Wow. Wow, thanks so much. All right,
You're
Claudia,
welcome.
thank you so much for your
My
time this
pleasure.
afternoon, and I will see you on the Facebook group.